Um, I just refer to myself as Jewish. I identify as American and Hungarian.
Hello, everybody. I am a Jewish person in the United States, so I consider myself an American, but I also associate with being a Jewish person.
I never thought about that. I would always say, I'm an Asian Jew. Hey, that's so weird, so crazy, right? And they'd be like, whoa, that's interesting. Like, huh.
Israeli Jew, I'd say. Because Jew and Israeli have two different cultures. So that's why I say I'm traditional. Like, I'll do the holidays and I'll hang out with the family. It'd be more family events for us. And then there's also Israeli culture, which is like the food and just like behavior, language, stuff like that.
I think Judaism is about tradition, I think. I mean, if I took a DNA test, I'd probably be 75% Ashkenazi Jew, but I think that anyone can be Jewish if they practice tradition.
A lot of people consider Judaism to be a religion, but it's actually a race, like scientifically. Mostly because how scientists classify race is by the diseases that follow those races. So Jewish people will specifically have certain diseases that follow them.
Both my parents are Jewish. I know Judaism usually runs down through the mom's side, but my dad also was raised Jewish. He was born and raised in Brooklyn, and my mom was born and raised in Waco, Texas. When she was growing up, there wasn't really a Jewish presence, so for her, being able to go to synagogue and learn prayers and feel that connection, and then if you're anywhere else in the state or otherwise and you go to synagogue, you'll still know the prayers, even if they're slightly different. It's still there and you still have that connection to it. So that was extremely important to my mom growing up and in raising me and my sister. I never would look for a Jewish community outside of my Hebrew school because I never felt that connected to it or that it was that important to my identity.
So personally, I enjoy being friends with people from all backgrounds, and I feel like that makes the most wholesome person.
A lot of my friends are Jewish because, you tend to gravitate towards people who are similar to you. That I find it interesting that we can share our traditions. I find it comforting. Personally, I have not experienced any prejudice directly because I grew up in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. Like my dad, who grew up in the South, and he was the only Jewish kid in his community, so he got bullied a lot. Yeah, he got beat up like severely.
Oh my god. How do they pick out who's
Our last name.
I personally haven't experienced much anti-Semitism, mostly because I've been like involved in a lot in like Jewish communities and stuff, and you always get the comments about like picking up change on the street or something like that.
Throughout history, Jews are always hated.
Yeah.
Like the Jewish people only like have themselves.
We
throughout
have a history of being conquered. Like that's
Yeah.
it. And being moved around and forced to different places.
But I think because an Asian Jew is to most people a new concept, it's not innately bad.
I've had people ask me if I had horns. Oh, I was in a class with Hunter one time when someone was like, Jews are taking over the media. And I was like, wow. Like, we're like 16 million people in the world and you have that much to say about us. And then another person responded, yeah, like 40% of slave owners in America were Jews. I was like, that number doesn't even make sense. I had to do this in Hunter, actually. We had a history class, and we were learning about Richard Nixon at one point. And there's an entire recording about him rambling about like the spy Jews that are coming and infiltrating our government, and like on the Watergate tapes.
Yeah, it's like other minorities are like quick to tell us we're white, but a white supremacist will tell us in a second we're not white.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
we exist in this weird crossroads
Right,
where
exactly.
no one really knows anything. And that's like the issue with ethnicity and race when you're Jewish.
I think in some instances, I think that some media would like to say that Jewish people don't face any discrimination and we don't as much as other groups. But considering our history, and especially in recent months when there's been defacement of people's offices with swastikas, I find it to be more of a problem now than it was when I was growing up. So being a Hungarian Jew, the country now is very anti-Semitic. So I use my mom's last name whenever I go to Hungary, so they're not able to distinguish me as being Jewish.
I know my cousin actually changed his last name to make it sound less Sephardic, so that way he could find it easier to get a job because his last name sounded very Yemenite. Ashkenazi Jews come from Europe, so a lot of times European Jews would have like a lot of like discrimination. That like in Europe there's a lot of discrimination. There's like a lot of like color discrimination. Like the paler you are, the better. So in Judaism, a lot of the Ashkenazi Jews still held some of those prejudice when they came to Israel. And they would deal with like Sephardic Jews who were darker and more Arab looking. Also, like the fact that unifies is that everyone's Jewish, so that really helps. So that's why people are like, oh, like as soon as you hear someone's Jewish, you feel like that, like, oh, connection, like, oh, they're Jewish, I can talk to them.
But we have some differences, but a lot of times Sephardic Jews will tend to be wealthier. I don't know why that is, but that just happens to be so. So there is some looking down upon Ashkenazi Jews, but I think overall we have a kind of camaraderie generally in the modern day, just because we know we've all been through things and we need to like kind of stick together. The only times that I see Jewish people in media is when it's a part of like a comedy, like a joke. Like Seinfeld is an amazing show, and that is made by a Jewish person and depicts Jews. And I feel like the way for Jews to come to being in media is always through comedy, right? So like Jerry Seinfeld, Adam Sandler, all these really big names. So I don't really see roles that are played by, action heroes that are Jewish or anything like that.
Especially like in your concept, like an Asian Jew.
Oh,
Like,
well, that's never represented. Like, the people who decide to put that in their media and represent that will be like, I'm so forward thinking. Like, I'm creating an Asian Jew in my media. But then it's like, okay, like, cool for that representation. Don't make it a certain way. The only books that I guess are deemed noteworthy that represent Judaism is the Holocaust. There isn't literature, I guess, in a general positive light on like, this is just Judaism. This is what it's like to be Jewish. It's always like, this is what it's like to be Jewish. Everything's wrong and everybody hates us. Or like, people die, and you have to know that this is like depressing and this is what happens.
The only literature that I've read involved in like Jewish culture has been on my own, so nothing from within the public school system, because the only time you hear about Jewish people in the public school system is when you're learning about the Holocaust, which is not how I want to learn about my people, basically.
I remember in 10th grade we read Night by Elie Wiesel, so it was part of the Holocaust unit, so we did learn about it, and then I took a history of the Holocaust class my senior year, so that was entirely about the Holocaust.
I feel like Sephardic Jews get very like low recognition. Like people don't even know what they who they are. So for me, the Holocaust was like, okay, obviously the Holocaust is important, but at the same time, like my family was in Iraq and Yemen, and they had their own persecution going on, for 20 years in those countries, and they had to flee the country too. Like both sides are bad. Like, there's no good guy, bad guy kind of thing. It's not even as simple as just saying Palestinian. It depends where you're from also. If you're from the West Bank or you're from Gaza, you're not going to get along. So it's a lot more complicated than just saying, let's have a two-state solution, because there's already so many people living there and it's increasing.
Personally, I believe in a two-state solution, which is not very common for a Jewish person.
It's a very, very broad topic with a lot of discussion, and I don't think that I'm educated enough because of my experience to talk about it.
Do you have anything else to say?
Happy Hanukkah.